He found the letter by chance, hidden at the bottom of a drawer that no one had opened in years. The house was empty, too silent for a place that had once been full of voices. The envelope had no return address, only the family name handwritten in a firm, old-fashioned script. As soon as he opened it, the first sentence changed everything. "If you are reading this, it's because I couldn't tell you while I was alive." From then on, each line seemed to peel away a layer of the story he thought he knew. The letter spoke of choices made in secret, of decisions that changed destinies without anyone noticing. It revealed that an event treated as chance was, in fact, planned. A name mentioned there had never been mentioned in any family conversation. A relative who officially never existed. As he read, scattered memories began to make sense. Strange glances at gatherings, silences that were too long, discussions that ended too quickly. The letter didn't explain everything at once. On the contrary, it seemed written to cause doubt, to force the reader to revisit the past with different eyes. Upon finishing the first page, he already knew he couldn't simply put it back. The letter wasn't just a revelation. It was an invitation to delve into something the entire family had tried to bury for decades, and now there was no way to pretend none of it was real. In the second part of the letter, the tone changes completely. The writing becomes more direct, almost urgent, as if the author knew that this secret could no longer wait. There lay the explanation for a separation that marked generations, for an inheritance that was never discussed, and for a broken promise that altered everyone's course. The letter revealed that a decision made in a single night was responsible for driving people apart, creating false versions of the truth, and shaping the family around a comfortable lie. The reader realizes that nothing he experienced was exactly as he was told. The image he had of who led the family begins to crumble line by line. In the end, the letter doesn't ask for forgiveness or understanding. It simply states that the truth needed to be known, even if it came too late. When he folds the paper and places the envelope on the table, the house seems different. The silence now weighs heavily. He understands that that letter changed not only the past but the future as well. Because, from that moment on, he would have to decide whether to continue upholding the version everyone believes or whether he would have the courage to break the family's last silent agreement. And he knows that this decision will define everything from now on. He spent the night sleepless, sitting at the table, staring at the letter as if it could speak for itself. Each sentence returned to his mind with more weight than before. In the morning, he decided to look for answers where he had never dared to ask. He started with the oldest members of the family, but mentioning a passage from the letter was enough to make their faces close up. Some pretended not to know, others said that it shouldn't be touched. The silence that had always existed was now confirmed as a choice, not as chance. On a visit to the old house of a distant relative, he found a box stored high up in the cupboard. Inside, old photos, torn documents, and a portrait folded in half. The face in that photo matched exactly the name mentioned in the letter. That non-existent relative had been there all along, hidden in memories that no one wanted to acknowledge. Little by little, he realized that the family had constructed an entire narrative to survive without facing the truth. The letter wasn't written to cause pain, but to prevent that lie from continuing to be passed down from generation to generation. Each new discovery made it impossible to go back. He was no longer just a reader of secrets. Now he was part of them. And the deeper he went, the clearer it became that this story had never truly been forgotten, only swept under the rug, waiting for someone to have the courage to pull it out. In the last envelope, found days later, there were only a few lines, but they were the most direct of all. There was the final request. Not to reveal everything at once, but not to let the truth die again. The letter made it clear that the family's biggest mistake wasn't the secret itself, but the silence that followed. He realizes that if he keeps it to himself, he will end up repeating the exact same pattern. At a family gathering, the atmosphere changes as soon as he places the envelopes on the table. No one says anything at first. Eyes meet, tense, as if everyone knew that moment would come one day. He doesn't accuse, he doesn't confront. He just reads. Line by line. The reaction isn't explosive, but heavy. Some people cry, others get up and leave the room. The The family will never be the same again, and everyone understands that. But in the end, something changes. There's no more need to pretend. The letter fulfilled its purpose. It didn't unite everyone, it didn't solve everything, but it broke a cycle that lasted decades. And at that moment, he understands that certain truths don't exist to destroy families, but to prevent them from continuing to live based on a lie. After that meeting, the family entered a strange period where no one knew exactly how to act. Conversations became short, meetings rarer, and each phone call seemed to carry something unspoken. He began receiving messages from relatives he had never been close to before, asking indirect questions, trying to understand how far the truth had gone. Gradually, different versions of the same story emerged, each trying to justify the past in its own way. An uncle admitted that he had always known part of the secret, but had been convinced to remain silent for everyone's sake. A cousin confessed that she had suspected it since childhood, but had learned not to insist. The letter, which before seemed like just a personal account, now revealed itself as the central piece of a much larger story. He realizes that lie shaped important decisions. Changes of city, sudden breakups, choices that no one ever questioned. Everything began to make sense too late. The hardest part wasn't dealing with the truth, but accepting that his entire life had been built on something incomplete. Even so, a new feeling was emerging, something close to relief. For the first time, it was no longer necessary to interpret silences or accept vague explanations. The truth was there, uncomfortable but finally whole. Over time, he decided to keep the letter again, but not in the same place. He put the envelopes in a simple box, without hiding or locking it. Not as a secret, but as a record. The family went their separate ways after that. Some drifted apart, others grew closer in unexpected ways. Nothing was ever the same again, and that became clear to everyone. On a final reading, he realized something he had overlooked. The letter wasn't trying to correct the past, only to prevent the same mistake from continuing. It wasn't about guilt, nor about justice. It was about interrupting a cycle. By closing the box, he understands that letter didn't just change the family's history. It changed how he sees silence, absences, and easy versions of the truth. The secret that lasted decades finally lost its power, not because everyone agreed, but because it was no longer hidden. And, even if the family never returns to being the same, one thing became impossible from then on: pretending that story never existed. A few months later, the house that had been the stage for all those revelations was put up for sale. During the final cleaning, he walked calmly through the rooms, observing details that had never caught his attention before. Marks on the wall, old objects, photographs forgotten in boxes. Everything seemed to carry a different weight now. In one of the last drawers, he found a short note, almost erased by time, written by the same person from the letter. There was no new secret there, just a simple sentence saying that silence seemed easier at first, but heavier as the years went by. That made it clear that the fear of destroying the family was precisely what kept her imprisoned for so long. As he left the house for the last time, he realized he no longer felt anger or curiosity, only understanding. The truth didn't bring immediate peace, but it brought something more honest: clarity. He understood that each person in that family did what they thought was best within their limitations. And accepting that was the final step in leaving the past in its proper place, without trying to rewrite it, without trying to justify it. Years later, in a smaller gathering with fewer people and less silence, someone asked about the family history, about things that had previously been avoided. He answered directly, without exaggeration, simply recounting what had happened. There was no shock, no argument, just listening. At that moment, it became clear that the cycle had been broken for good. The letter fulfilled its purpose not by revealing a great secret, but by allowing the truth to cease being taboo. He kept the box for the last time, now as part of the story, not as something to be feared. The family was never the same again, but it became real. And, in the end, he understood that some letters don't exist to reconcile people, nor to correct old mistakes. They exist to ensure that the future is not built on the same silence that almost destroyed everything.